Canadians are waiting too long to get answers to their tax questions, and even when they do get a response from a CRA call center agent, the information is often inaccurate. That's all according to a scathing report from the Auditor General today. The Auditor General's office placed 167 test calls to the federal tax agency this year and found that only 18% of calls last year were answered within 15 minutes. The average wait time to speak to an agent was 33 minutes, and even then, only 17% of the answers given to general questions were found to be accurate. Auditor General Karen Hogan joins me now. Auditor General, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So this report on the Canada Revenue Agency comes 5 years after the last one. Much of the same issues are there: slow wait times, inaccurate information. Is it getting better or is it getting worse?
That's a hard question to actually answer because there's been some improvement since 2017, but yet the main objective of making sure that people waited less time and had accurate responses, it hasn't improved. What we saw improve was that now you could record calls. So we were able to triage the tests that we did to be able to highlight that if we asked general questions about income taxes, the accuracy was only about 17%. But if we listened to calls where someone called in and asked these questions unique about their own situation and their own account, they were getting a much higher accuracy rate, like over 80%. So while there's been some improvement there, the wait times are still really long.
Okay, let's break up the delays and then the deficiency in the information. On the information, how can it be so off on a general request, but so precise on a specific request? You know, is it because they can call up my file and look at my information, or how do we explain that gap there?
Yeah, so when I'm talking about account specific, it's when someone's gone through the option of proving who they are so that they can ask unique questions. There's about 80% of the calls that are really account specific. About half of those, however, are linked to help me gain access to my account, that online portal that's supposed to take people away from the call centers.
I've had that problem.
And so I would hope that those would be accurate, and we are seeing accuracies. Questions like, when will my tax return be assessed? When can I expect a GST check? All of those are very accurate. But when someone's calling and asking a generic tax question, if it's about a person, so for example, if a member of my family passed away in December, when do I need to file their tax return? That answer is incorrect. So we only saw accuracy there about 17% of the time. It went up to a little over 50% if you were a business calling and asking those kinds of general questions or asking questions about accessing benefits.
So do you have a clear understanding of why the miss rate was so high on some of these things?
So all I can say is I could chalk it up to a few things. One is perhaps the tools that the agents are using aren't really helping them be more efficient and aren't helping them provide accurate responses. So once you made it through, the average call lasts about 17 minutes, but about 30% of that is spent sitting on hold while an agent's looking for an answer. So if you could improve tools, you could shorten those calls and hopefully give them more accurate answers, and then move on to the next call. So I think it's not just about sending all the calls to one place. We made a recommendation that the calls that are real technical in nature about help me get into my account should get segregated and triaged, kind of like the northern call lines, so that you can train your agents differently, different skills to answer income tax questions versus technical account questions.
Right, okay. And really it's all going into the one pipe right now, and that's where it's getting caught up. Okay, because there has been a massive priority given to improving service response time, reducing wait times. They wanted calls answered within 15 minutes. Only 18% of the calls you find were answered within 15 minutes in 2024-25. But the federal government in 2022 put about $400 million in the CRA to try to improve this performance. So why has that not necessarily made the difference they were hoping for there?
Well, I don't have the answer to that, unfortunately. I think one of the items I would point to is probably how they evaluate the agents in a call center. We found that less than 10% of someone's annual performance rating was focused on the accuracy and completeness of the responses they gave. Most of their evaluation was focused on adhering to a schedule or meeting call volumes. That doesn't create the culture and the environment to favor accuracy and completeness over just getting through calls. We did see that the new system provided you with an update on wait times. Yet we found that was often underestimating how long you would wait. But at least giving a wait time allows a caller to decide, do I wait? Do I go the self-service option?
Right.
Or do I hang up and try again later?
But the quota, for lack of a better word, to being assessed on how many calls you get through, how quickly you stick to your schedule and get through the number of complaints over the quality of what you're delivering. How is it that only 10% of it is based on giving accurate information on complex issues like tax information? Why is it weighted so dramatically the other way?
I mean, that's a question that you'd have to ask the Canada Revenue Agency. They decided how they're going to evaluate their people, but what I can tell you is what you evaluate, people tend to pay attention to and try to work at achieving. So we did recommend that they look at how they assess individuals, but we also looked at how they do quality reviews. And we found that those quality reviews weren't giving actionable feedback or coaching. And there was very little training or coaching given to agents because there was very little in these evaluation reports. So I think there's lots of opportunities to improve service.
Lots of opportunities is a heck of a euphemism there, Ms. Hogan, because you say that the weighting of the evaluations is on getting through a higher number of calls and keeping to a schedule, but that doesn't seem to be getting done. And there's not enough emphasis on the accuracy, and there's deficiencies there. So it seems like there's a missing of the mark in both directions. And I know the Finance Minister, Minister Champagne, put in a 100-day action plan. I'm presuming that's because they get an early peek at some of your findings in the process of responding to it. I mean, what is your sense of what they've said they're going to do about this and whether it can be actually achieved with what they're prepared to do to fix these things?
So that action plan was released actually after our audit period, and while we were sort of working through the report in the final stages, I would expect that 100-day action plan coupled with the responses to our recommendations will see some improvement. But it's clear to me that callers are waiting too long, and I can imagine the frustration if after waiting you don't get an accurate response.
There was one other note I wanted to touch on. With the release of your report, you issued sort of a statement or a note about what has happened inside government with the culture around managing contracts and procurement. And you made the point that a lot of things needed to get rushed in COVID, and there's an understandable reason for many of those things, but we're past that now, and a lot of the deficiencies are still there. And when you look at sort of the way corners were getting cut, that's my words, not yours, and you're warning here that the need to go fast does not mean we should skip steps. There's about to be an urgent, push on procurement and economic development and transformation in government if the ambitions of the Prime Minister and his government are to be believed. What message were you trying to send to the civil service in that statement today? Because it seems like we need to tighten some things up and be a bit more careful with what's coming.
So this message was to mark sort of the middle of my mandate. I'm already through 5 years out of the 10-year mandate, and I thought it was a good opportunity to sit back and tell Parliament and the public service what I saw about our world-class public service. They are very ingenious and creative and find solutions. And we saw throughout the pandemic that they were able to pivot and really focus on what I would say is a service mindset. But it came at some costs during the pandemic. And I hope that as the government's on a path right now to sort of transform the way we work, leverage technology and be faster, that we lean on the past, but then pivot towards the future and think about how to do it without compromising accountability and transparency, because there needs to be a balance. It can't all be about speed. You still need good checks and balances, and I will always be there with my office to make sure that Parliament and the public service receive fact-based, nonpartisan information.
Do you get the sense, though, that there's been a copper fastening taking a process internally in the wake of some of your recent findings and the problems we've seen with the way some of the contracts were administered during the COVID years? Do you think that recalibration is happening with enough rigor inside the civil service at this point?
I think those were one of the other things that I mentioned in my message was the focus on procurement. We've had quite a few audits that have talked about people just not applying the existing procurement rules and how that really hinders the ability to show value for money. I think it was at a time when everyone was rushed, but now it's time to say, what do we do going forward? And I really do think that more rules is not necessarily the solution. A time to step back and say, how can we make procurement in the federal government more efficient and effective and deliver value for money is something that the public service is capable of doing, but we need to look at the quantity of rules.
Yeah, make it cleaner and simple so people can follow easier rules. But just as a final point, one of the things being looked at to improve service delivery is adopting artificial intelligence in some of the practices and technological changes. But the chatbot, going back to CRA, not accurate, problematic, a low accuracy rate in some of the questions that you were testing there. This is a technology that has the potential to be enormously transformative, but also is still not quite there in some capacities. I mean, what concerns, if any, do you have based on the findings of this audit and the push to adopt AI as something government wants to use more fully?
Well, I think when you adopt AI, you have to do it in a responsible way, and you always have to recognize that what you feed into it drives really the outcomes that you get out of it. And in the case of Charlie, the chatbot, it was only programmed to look at answer individual tax questions, not about businesses and or about benefits. And we asked it questions in all three areas. So it was accurate 33% of the time, but artificial intelligence just available on the web was giving us more accurate information. So I think it's a good place to start. But there will always be people who want to self-serve, and then there will always be Canadians who want to call and speak to an agent, and it's about making both effective, efficient, and accurate.
Karen Hogan, Auditor General of Canada. We always appreciate the time. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
A scathing new report from the Auditor General says the Canada Revenue Agency call centres are too slow to answer and that CRA agents are often providing inaccurate answers to the questions they are asked.
The tools that the agents are using aren't really helping them be more efficient and aren't helping them provide accurate responses. So once you made it through, the average call lasts about 17 minutes, but about 30% of that is spent sitting on hold while an agent's looking for an answer.
The Auditor General's office placed 167 test calls to the Federal Tax Agency this year, and here's what they found. Only 18% of calls last year were answered within 15 minutes, which is the target. The average wait time for a customer to speak to an agent was actually 33 minutes. And even then, only 17% of the answers given to general questions were found to be accurate. Wayne Long is the Secretary of State responsible for the Canada Revenue Agency, and he joins me now. Wayne Long, it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
Always, David. Great to be here.
18% of calls answered in a timely manner, only 17% of general questions with the correct answer. If I had grades like that, I'd get an F. I mean, how do you explain this to Canadians?
Well, I mean, you characterized it as scathing. I would say it's constructive criticism. We accept the report. We acknowledge the report. I would point out that out of those 167 calls that you referred to, where 17% they said were answered accurately, there were questions. They really weren't tax file related questions, to be honest. They were like, do I file my taxes on April 30th? Yes. Well, let's assume April 30th fell on a Sunday. So you'd file it actually on May 1st. Well, that was deemed an inaccurate.
Well, not with NetFile, not with the online filing. Now you can file it whenever you want, right?
Yeah, but a lot of those questions were non-tax file related for sure. Now, the CRA does their own audit, if you will, and they listen in to 100,000 calls per year. Our numbers are much higher than that. We're upwards of almost 90%. But look, we acknowledge the report. We acknowledge that there was lots of room for improvement. I was sworn in May 13th. I believe in holding CRA management accountable. We have regular meetings with Commissioner Hamilton. We talk regularly to UTE President Marc Briere. We've talked to Francis Beaulieu frequently. And as you know, Minister Champagne and myself enacted a 100-day plan for CRA to improve their services. I mean, Canadians deserve accurate, timely, and prompt information. So just let me, if I can.
Yep.
The 100-day plan started September 2nd. We started at 17%, 2 weeks later to 34%,
This
A
is on
month
calls
later-
being answered
Yep.
correctly or calls being answered within 15 minutes?
No, being answered within 15 minutes.
Okay.
54% to 77%. Last week, we almost hit 90%. So, look, again, Canadians deserve a CRA that's responsive. This is not on the public servants. They're world class. They deliver Canada Child Benefit, as you know, tax credits. They, deliver benefits to Canadians. Where would Canada be without their delivery of COVID payments? So, again, a 100-day plan. We recognize there's lots of room for improvement. I believe in baseline. I believe in accountability. We're working with the executive, and we're going to have results. And we're showing results.
You said a couple of different things there. You sort of quibbled with the methodology of the Auditor General, saying you have a different way of tracking it and measuring it, and your numbers are much higher. But then said there's if you have a 90% success rate, you said there's still much room for improvement.
Sure.
90% is 90%. That'd be pretty good for
Right.
any government department. And the 100-day plan, if it's actually higher and it's doing okay, then why the 100-day plan and where is the room for improvement? I mean, there's $400 million put into the Canada Revenue Agency in 2022, and these sort of problems are still there on a performance level, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was sworn in on May 13th. I believe in accountability. I believe that, Commissioner Hamilton and his team want to get it right. We've tasked them to get it right. We've challenged them to get it right. They're accountable to get it right. And I believe the 100-day plan is a perfect example of when you focus, when you reallocate, when you say, what can we do better? How can we help the call center agents with a better digital service package? How can we improve AI? Let's look upstream. As I said to you before once, 300,000 calls to the CRA were just to have their their accounts unlocked.
Yep.
So, we're looking at everything. We're looking at, calls not answered. We're looking at accuracy of information. But first and foremost, we want to get the call center workers the tools they need to offer the services back to Canadians. And that's what Canadians deserve.
Right.
And we're going to deliver that for them.
Well, look, you talk about AI. Charlie, the chatbot, as it's known inside Canada Revenue, is not doing a great job, according to some of the assessment. It's only set up to deal with certain types of questions, but then it's accessible to everyone, so it's not fit for purpose, right? So this is something I think you'll want them to look at. But maybe some of the challenge here is staffing levels, because they've hit their service delivery targets when they had the extra staff at CRA during COVID. And now you're looking at reducing the size of the civil service through attrition in the upcoming budget. I mean, if CRA is struggling to meet its targets with what it has now, are they going to have to deal with less after the November 4th budget?
Well, I think the 100-day plan has shown that they can meet their targets with what they have now. So sure, we've extended some contracts for the next tax season. But again, this isn't about necessarily adding more people or taking away people. This is about looking at the systems that are in place, looking at how we can support the workers that are there, getting them the tools they need to answer in a timely, accurate fashion. And I believe that if we focus in, if we hit the hot spots, if you will, again, we go upstream, we see where the bottlenecks are, I believe that we can get it right. But first off, we need a baseline. I want to see what it takes for us to, offer the proper service to Canadians. We're getting that. I think we're developing, me and my team, and Minister Champagne and his team, are developing a great working relationship with Commissioner Hamilton, with UTE President Marc Briere, with Francis Beaulieu. We're getting lots of input, and we will get this right. Canadians deserve a CRA that's responsive and accurate, and we're going to get there.
Look, I know you were only sworn in after the April 28th election.
May 13th.
Right, May 13th. But your government was elected in 2015, and the Auditor General started reporting on the problems at CRA in 2017.
Right.
So I know you're there with your 100-day plan, but it's been a lot of 100 days from now back to then. And some of these problems are ones that were identified in previous Auditor General's reports.
Yes.
So, why wasn't this focus and clarity and baselining done in the past when the Liberals have been in power and people like Diane Leboutillier was the National Revenue Minister for almost a decade until she went into fisheries? How come this didn't get done?
I can't answer that question. I know what's happened since I've been sworn in. I know the action I'm taking. Beyond the 100-day plan, I've tasked Commissioner Hamilton to come back with a 3-year and 5-year plan. I want to look into the future. I believe in stretch goals. Like I said to you before, shoot for the stars. If you hit the moon, I'm going to be very, very happy. So, look, it's about working the plan. It's about delivering service. And it's just about stepping back and saying, look, what do we need? What do our call center agents need? Better digital service package. We're working with that. SSC and CRA are working on that. I mean, the old digital service package was 10 years ago. A lot of the Auditor General's report that she gave, and again, I take the report, I accept the report, it's constructive criticism, but a lot of that was prior to, the swearing in, kind of us.
But you don't get
with,
to, it's not, it's not an Etch-a-Sketch. You don't just get to shake it, on the swearing in and everything goes away, because a lot of the same ministry and political staffers and decision makers are still there, right? So like you're halfway through the 100-day plan. I mean, what if you
52 days, in fact.
Okay, sorry, very, very precise on that, right?
I count them daily.
Okay, but what if what the CRA workers need is more co-workers? Because there isn't enough people at the other end to pick up the phone and deal with what can be complex questions by people, some of whom are older and, struggling to deal with the complexity, because there was a case of a 92-year-old woman, I believe, referenced in the Auditor General's report. The stated intention is to reduce the size of the civil service on the operating side. This would fit into the operating side to do it through attrition. But what if you find you just need more people at CRA?
We will cross that bridge when we come to it. We're going to look, the CER, as I said before, I wouldn't prejudge the CER. Let's look at the whole thing. Maybe we could make a case that we need to strategically put more people here.
CER is the
review.
The review, okay,
Yeah,
just for the people at home.
Yeah, sorry. So, again, I'm not going to prejudge that review. CRA drives government revenue. CRA do a great job for us, collecting tax money. So, again, I want to get benchmarks, I want to get metrics, I want to measure where we're at, and then we will make decisions on that. I am not convinced that CRA needs to be cut. I'm not convinced that we need to throw more people at it. I think we need to step back, analyze it, look at it like a business, and as you know, I've referenced businesses before. Let's look at this as a business and see, what do we need to do to make it better and more responsive for Canadians?
Well, business decisions get made in budgets. The budget's in 2 weeks, and using your 52-day mark, we're 48 days away from the end of the 100-year plan. So will this budget just be silent on the Canada Revenue Agency, or are we going to see some restructuring plans in this budget? Because if the 100 days goes past budget day, what kind of clarity and response can Canadians expect?
Right. Well, obviously, I'm not going to, as you would know, comment as to what is in or not in the budget, but I do know that we're working with the UTE president, with Commissioner Hamilton, to find a path forward that CRA can provide great service to Canadians. I'm convinced we'll get there. I'm convinced that, with the right digital service package, equipping the call center employees properly, we will give Canadians the service they deserve.
Okay, Wayne Long, Secretary of State, responsible for the Canada Revenue Agency. We may want to talk to you in 48 days.
Absolutely.
At the end of 100 days. Thanks
Can't
for
wait.
coming. Thanks for coming in today, sir. Appreciate your time.